It's back! The Iron World Cup, of course. Today it's semi-final time, as the Cobra Radspeed takes on the Titleist T300 to see who's going to get that space in the final. Right, let's get started. So today it's time for the final semi-final of the Irons World Cup, as we find out which game improvement iron is going to book its spot in the final with the Wilson D9. Now, the two products that have qualified and got this far are the Cobra Radspeed and the Titleist T300. But I'm going to switch things up just a little bit, and that's because Titleist have actually replaced this iron. So it was this previous T300 that beat out the Honma GS to get into the semi-final, but I just think it doesn't really make sense to continue with this when we've got a new model. So today we're going to be using the brand new T300, which I have to say looked great, and this is going to be going up head to head against the Cobra Radspeed to see which one's going to make it to the final. Now, when there's a new club on offer to hit, you know I'm going to start with that one first. Right, let's get started. So over the ball, in terms of shaping, I would say this is pretty similar to his predecessor, and I think for people who liked that style, they're going to be really happy about that, because overall the shaping and the styling is really nice, so not much has changed there at all. I do feel like the way they've used the colours on the top line though does almost make it look slightly smaller, which is definitely a plus point for me. Now, in terms of game improvement irons, this actually doesn't have that much offset, which is definitely a bonus point for me, because visually over the ball, I really do like that to be a bit less. Now, I'm actually gaming the T100S currently, so it's going to be interesting to see just how these perform compared to that in terms of distance, and obviously what they do compared to the Cobra Radspeed. Right, let's hit a few shots and take a look at the data. That felt really nice. Went dead straight as well. And it's flown a long way. That's come out at 167 yards carry distance. That's pretty impressive. I'm a bit nervous to hit another one now. I'm not sure I can actually get any better data than what I got on that shot there. Pretty similar. Tiny little fade. I gained a grand total of 1 yards. Pretty consistent so far. Now, in terms of feel, these definitely feel a little bit duller off the face compared to my T100Ss, but overall they still do feel really nice, although it does help that all the shots I've hit so far have been pretty good. It'll be interesting to see if that changes with any off-centre strikes. And if by magic I hit one. Okay, that wasn't my best swing, and we saw quite a big drop off in yardage, to be honest. That's dropped down to 146 yards, so I've lost like a good 20 yards there, but it really wasn't my best strike at all. In terms of line though, I'm really impressed with the dispersion. It stayed very straight and really hasn't finished that much left of the target at all. So in terms of forgiveness, you really are getting that help there. So in terms of direction control, you really are getting that help with the forgiveness, but not necessarily as much with the distance. Right, let's try to put a better swing on this one. That was better, definitely not as heavy. Yeah, it's got a lot more consistent distance, then it's kind of come back to my first two shots and it's back up at 167 again. I'm not really sure that third shot was kind of that representative of how this performs, because I did catch it quite heavy, and really if you chunk something out on the course, no club's going to really help you out with that. That was slightly toey, but still a really solid straight ball flight, and it's carried out 160 yards, so I think that's more of the misstrike that you would see out on the course and that this would help you with, because a drop off of 7 yards really isn't going to kill you that much on the course at all. You know what, your good shots with these are seriously impressive. I've got a really nice high ball flight, which a lot of people who are looking for game improvement irons really want help with that height on their shots, and they're also carrying a long way. 168 yards for me with a 7-iron is pretty long. That was my best yet. That's flown 172 yards. That's insane. That's up there again, that's flown out at 170. Maybe I need to game these. I do think the sole width for me on my bad strikes is just a little bit too thick, hence why you saw that heavy shot earlier. And for me, I just do like a slightly smaller sole interacting with the turf. But I have to say, I've been pleasantly surprised with how well the kind of turf interaction has been here. To say the size of the sole, I've been really pleased with it for most of my shots. I'm not sure that could have flown much straighter. The drop line's literally straight in front of the apex line. Insane. Okay, so before we hit the Radspeed, let's just have a quick look at the averages here, because to be honest, I think there was some really impressive data there. The grouping was pretty tight. It ended up a little bit worse than it should have been because of that one shot I caught heavy. But honestly, the shots were so straight on the target. I was really impressed. It's probably the straightest club I've hit all year. Now, I know the big thing everyone wants to know is distance, distance, distance. So the average carry distance there came out at 164, which I actually think is slightly unfair because there were so many longer shots than that out there. But obviously I did have that one quite heavy one. If we take that out, that takes it up to 166, and I had one other that I didn't quite strike my best, and that would have taken the average up to 168. So in terms of my really good strikes, there was some seriously impressive distance there, and my longest shots got up to 172 yards, which is kind of insane. But in terms of front to back dispersion, it doesn't look that good because of those two bad shots, but if you look at the other 8, it was really tight, and I would be really happy with that. So I said I think this is one of the straightest clubs I've hit all year, and that definitely comes out in the data. There was quite a few shots that finished within a yard of the target, which I'd definitely be very happy with that on the course. In fact, the worst shot only finished 8 yards from the target, so really you're not going to be missing many greens with these if they keep performing like that. As you would expect with this kind of club, the spin was a little bit lower than that 7,000 mark that people talk about for a 7-iron. This came out at just over 5,000, but I'd be pleased with that in terms of matching it with the shot type, because I had such a high ball flight, you probably wouldn't really need that much more spin than that with this anyway. Right, let's go ahead and hit some now with the Cobra Radspeed, and then we can come back and see how the data stacks up against the two models. Now over the ball, this definitely visually has a very different look to the Titleist thanks to that carbon fibre in the top line. And I don't think it would be everyone's cup of tea just because how drastically different it is to lots of other models out there and how much that black contrasts with the rest of the club head. But actually I quite like it. Now in terms of shaping, the sizes aren't that much different, but this has a bit more angles to it compared to the T300, which has a bit more of a constant curve over the top of the club. Oh, that was a nice strike. Straight ball flight again. And straight out of the park, that's flown 173 yards. The T300 could be in trouble here. Oh, caught that very toey. Still, incredibly, very straight ball flight, slight draw, and it's carried 158 yards. Not my best, but could be worse. Bit better, 165, but I'm not gonna lie, I caught that quite thin. That's better. Felt like I struck that really good though, and it's come out 166, so Not quite as good as the first one, and also not quite as good as my good strikes with the T300. It's quite interesting though, in terms of feel, I'd say they're both quite similar. Definitely my widest shot of the day. Pretty good strike though. Finished just under 170. Laser beam. That's gone so straight. So far I would say my best shots with this have been pretty good, but I think it's been a little bit more consistent, and I do think some of that comes down to the sole width and kind of how it's cambered. To me, this feels a lot thicker through the ground than the T300. I think that's quite a big factor in how it's performing for me, because personally I do like a smaller sole, so I can notice quite a big difference in the strikes there. Again, it was a nice shot, a really nice ball flight and shape, but it just was slightly matty, and it's killed me a little bit on distance because of that. So that's filling out 161, which, to be honest, out on the course, I would be happy with that for a 7-iron, but compared to the T300, it's just not quite as good. Oh, that was nice though. 169, perfectly straight down the middle. Okay, last shot. I think this is gonna have to be a big one in terms of distance to try and match the T300 on the average carry distance mark. It's a nice strike, but it's just not gonna fly out as far. 165, pretty good, but let's go see what the averages are like. Now, I'm actually quite surprised by this, but if we go back in and look at the numbers of all the shots, so even my bad heavy strikes, the Cobra is actually the longer of the two by 2 yards. So the average there was 166 compared to 164 with the Titleist. Now, with both I hit 1 or 2 heavy strikes. So if we go ahead and take them out of the data for both clubs, then it is the Titleist that's longer, but only by 1 yard. So in terms of distance, there's really not that much in it. Now, if we switch to the grouping and the dispersion, this is where we start to see a bit more of a difference between the two clubs. The grouping area for the Radspeed was 543 square yards, and you could definitely see I had more shots offline with this. To me, it felt like because the sole width was wider, I was turning some shots over more and then kind of reacting to that and leaving some open out to the right. And you could see that in the numbers because my worst shots were finishing nearly 20 yards away from the pin compared to that 8 yards that we saw with the Titleist. And in the overall numbers, the Titleist only had a grouping of 287 yards squared, which is over half of what we saw with the Radspeed. Now for me out on the course, when you think of your misses and your dispersion when you're firing into the green, that 20 yards is gonna miss the green considerably, may even miss the green side bunkers and hazards. So you're leaving yourself with those awkward shots where you've got to get over a bunker onto the green. It's going to be really hard to make par. So for me, that smaller dispersion with the Titleist is a really standout factor in what I'd be looking for if I was personally getting fit. Now, if we go back and take a look at all the numbers now and do a little bit of a comparison, we can see on the best shots of both, the Titleist was 1 yard longer, but really, I don't think that would be making any decisions for me. The spin was very similar. We were both in the 5,200s, so you're not really getting much difference between the two at all. In terms of height, the Titleist was going a little bit higher, so it's flying up at 122 feet compared to 116. So if you're someone who does need that extra height, that's really going to help. It's going to help you get more distance as well because you're going to have more hang time. But crucially, it means the ball's going to come in steeper to the green, so it's more likely you can stop that ball quicker and keep it on the green. I guess you could also say on the other hand, if you're someone who launches it too high, maybe the Cobra would be a better option because it would keep it down a little bit lower. Now, my dynamic loft when I was hitting these shots, so that's the loft I was presenting at impact, was almost identical. They were both in the 38 degrees, so it really is the technology in that club that's creating that difference in ball flight and height there. You've all guessed who the winner is by now, right? Obviously, it has to be the Titleist T300. I mean, just how incredible was that dispersion? I don't think I've hit an iron that's gone that straight so consistently all year. Now, I knew this was going to be a great performing iron because the whole T-series has been so good this year, hence why half of it has ended up with my bag. But the Cobra Radspeed has been such a strong performer throughout this series, I was wondering if then anything could pip it. But it is the T300 that's going to be in the final with the Wilson D9, so make sure you tune back soon to see just how this gets on. Will this be the best game improvement iron of 2021? You'll have to come back and watch the final to find out. To make sure you don't miss it, make sure you've hit that subscribe button and you've got notifications turned on so you get a pop-up when the next video goes live. Right, that's all for today. If you have any questions about either of these irons or any of the irons that have been in the Iron World Cup, feel free to put them in the comments below. Also, do you think I made the right decision? Would you have picked this or the Cobra Radspeed? Let me know. As always, if you're after more golf content, head over to the National Club Golfer social media channels for more.